Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about the World of Warcraft Trade District Square in Stormwind City. The game was made by Blizzard Entertainment and was published in 2004. Since then, this square was in the expansion World of Warcraft Cataclysm reformed and remade in order to have its distinctive look right now. There are certain similarities as well, and how it was and how it is today, but there are also some differences in the entrance, for example, to the auction house, as well as some small architectural changes as well. So what we have here is a very typical stylized place in the World of Warcraft history. Many players know this place, and it is a place where a lot of people go by, pass through, which basically has the exact things that a square has. It is cornered by buildings. It has certain shops that you need to go to. There's the auction house, the bank nearby. So it's basically a pass-through square, which is also used for chilling out, maybe meeting someone, checking out some other players and how they're doing. It was especially more used during the time when no flying mounts were available, because then every person had to go through this square in order to go. So what I find very interesting architecture-wise is, and if you compare to the real life idea of architecture, is that there are like certain things which are kind of odd to it. Obviously, I don't want to criticize the makers of the square and the makers of the whole city as well. They put a lot of detail into it, in every small bit of it, but there are certain things which are a little bit weird if you take them for granted, for example. Yes, so here also have very nice attention for detail that the people, like the guards, are taking out their torches during the night and walk around, and it kind of adds a little flair to it. Anyway, so what I find interesting, for example, in this building, you have this very round shape on the roof. And it makes sense from the outside, but if you look in the inside, it doesn't really make too much sense, because you have this concave form that goes inside of it, and you have this very nice loft area in the store. But there would be obviously no room between that. As far as now, I have to admit that the inside doesn't really represent the outside really well. But in this case, we just have a hollow area where nothing is happening. Obviously, I can understand that it makes sense from a designer point, because it looks nice from the inside. And yeah, for example, also if you go across, you see the auction house, the main hub of the trading area, which is very nicely designed, but if you look closely to it, there are certain columns which doesn't really line up too correctly, and they have a statical, not really sustainable way of getting the loads downstairs. Here as well, you have some similarities, for example, with the windows, where in the outside and the inside they don't really exist anymore. As well as you have this very big shield of the thing there, and it has to be placed somewhere. The problem with that is it couldn't really sustain it because it wasn't really in a pillar. So that's just some small nitpicking, obviously. The same thing happens as well as on the trades, on the auction house, where there's a huge sign of it, but it is not really placed correctly. Here we see the columns which are not lined up, because you have the foundations, but it should really be on the right brick on the foundation as well, and you would not be able to have a sufficient load-bearing structure if it would be lining up like this exactly. Then here as well you have two beams crossing each other, which are intersecting, And this cannot really work because it really has to be above it and not really intersecting in between it. It looks nice, obviously, but it couldn't like work in any case. Here we have, for example, that you have the beam on the top, but the column doesn't really, the wooden column on the outside facade doesn't really line up to it. It should be lining up because otherwise the load just goes into like nothing. And this wouldn't be really sustainable if you would like to build a building by yourself on that way. And on a more urbanistic way, when I'm like thinking about squares and normal walkways, you go normally on the walkway on the side, and the middle is made for like horses or small wagons, this kind of thing. But here you see very clearly that if you would like to walk the normal walkway of it, there are some you don't have so much space, or things are in between. You have to pass, like go on the streets and go back to it, and go back on the streets and go back to it, in order for it to have like a safe walkway where no carriages or carish things or horses will bother you. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're like on the way to the Griffin and want to fly away. So yeah, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you might be able to look a bit more into the structure or into the design of the games, and always keep it with this little bit of grain of salt, but yeah, enjoy it.